Welcome to the Biz Gone Social podcast. We help entrepreneurs navigate how to get known, get customers, and get the edge over their competition. Here is your host, Lorraine Duncan.
So here we are on the Biz Gone Social podcast, and I am so glad to be here. And my promise to you, as always, is I want to give you a little bit of verbal caffeine that's going to energize your business. Because after all, don't you want to be the business that everyone's talking about? I know I do. And I am so stoked to have Scott Goodrich with me. Welcome, Scott.
Thank you very much for having me. Appreciate your having me jump on here. Love the opening and love to get rolling. So thank you so much.
Yeah, so why don't you tell my audience a little bit about what you do and who you serve?
Sure, absolutely. So, so I work with EOS, and for those that are not familiar with EOS, that is short for the Entrepreneurial Operating System. So talking to you, small business owners out there, we just help folks within the Entrepreneurial Operating System harmonize all of that human energy that they've got going in their business and get it all pointed in the right direction. EOS is based on a book called Traction, which my guess is that a lot of your listeners and audience are familiar with. Traction was written by Gino Wickman a while back and really just sets the table and the foundation for building a really strong small business.
So where did this name EOS come from? Do you know?
That's probably Gino's story to tell, but Gino's story is a great one. He's a serial entrepreneur, like many folks out there, and was running his family business, and as part of doing that, as it went through both a reorganization then ultimately a sale, he realized that he had something, but with what he was doing within his own entrepreneurial world, and was also part of one of the founding chapter of EO in Detroit, which is where Gino is from. And so as he was talking to other entrepreneurs, he started to cobble together a bunch of things that he knew and that others were talking about was as they were running their small businesses. And I think that idea around entrepreneurial operating, putting those two things together, that's what that EO stands for, entrepreneurial organization. So you kind of put that together and said, wait a second, I've got a system here that folks can follow. And that'll make a little bit of a blueprint, if you will, for how to really run a well-run small business. And so I would say it's the genesis is in there. I think the misnomer sometimes is people hear system and go, oh, I just buy some software. And it's the exact opposite, right? It has nothing to do with software. This is about putting together the right people, the right process, running your business on data. There's some really key components that those that are running their business on EOS are following. Strengthening those components and really putting that all together is what makes it go.
So it's funny because that was the first thing I thought. Is like, oh, I'm talking to a software guy.
Yeah,
today.
Software. It makes it easy, right? And that's, I think, one of the first things we tell any client, whether they ever work with us or not, is, hey, there is no magic bullet here, right? You're not going to be able to just take that and say, okay, if I swallow this pill, I'm going to be a great small business owner. My business is going to get going in the right direction. Right? There's the tools that are part of EOS, and it really is just a set of tools that we work with businesses to help them implement. But those tools are pretty simple. They're time tested. They've been around. There's nothing earth shattering. And if you read the book Traction, you go through and say, oh yeah, I get all that. But it's really the application of them and then the accountability to follow through on the implementation of those tools where the real magic happens. And so simple, but not easy, Lorraine. And I think that's the big takeaway for anyone that's looking to do this. There's nothing easy about running a small business, but if you get the right set of tools in there and you stay disciplined in following them, then you can really gain traction. That's how we get things started.
What is one of your favorite tools that you get excited about because it really does help business owners move forward?
I've been asked that question before. So I'm a bit of a data guy, just from my history there. And so the data component features something that is simply called a scorecard. And I'll use scorecard or KPIs or pick your favorite terminology along the way. But the scorecard that is part of EOS, there's a couple of things that make it unique, which I think for any small business owner, they can grab this and run with it. And the first is make sure that the things that you're measuring matter. It really is reflective of the health of your business. And these are things that you control. So that they're activities on a week-to-week basis that you control, and they're not outcomes. So it's a way to measure those controllable activities, the things that you know you need to do each week to move the business forward. And the scorecard within EOS also takes a look back at the last 13 weeks of your performance in those measurables. And so you get two things. You can say, okay, what was the last week like? But also, what are these trends? Is there something there that I need to pay attention to that maybe I didn't? And we let the data show the way. I'm sure you've seen this, and I've certainly experienced it as well. A lot of folks that have opened small businesses, they've got great instincts, can operate on intuition, maybe a little emotional, right? And they can run their business that way. And they can succeed for a short period of time on running on instincts and intuition. But at the end of the day, having the data to really show you where you need to spend your time is really effective. So I pointed that scorecard tool. It also resonates well with me because, I love to keep scoring things and it makes it easy. Right. And so that's probably the one that stands out the most.
Absolutely. You have, it's interesting. I love the fact that of a scorecard. And when it comes to goals, I think it's really important to have goals and measurable goals. When it comes to, implementing stuff, a lot of people struggle with that. They have all these they write, there's a lot of people that write goals, but yet when at the end of the day, if they look at that sheet of paper, they didn't accomplish much of the goals. What do you think is the major, why are people struggling with that?
Yeah, it's a fair question. And it's obviously the discipline and accountability it takes to even start a small business, right? It's probably something inherent there that folks can fulfill on those goals. We'll just go back to the scorecard example that may be one way to do it. And obviously, if you're a solopreneur, so I am a solopreneur on my coaching business, but I actually also have a business that my wife and I run, and we use scorecard in both matters. So it works whether you're doing it individually or you have others. But let's just take an example where you've got several people working for you. On the scorecard, you actually share the accountability for each measurable is owned by one person, right? So if I set a target that's around, I need to have 5 sales calls this week, right? That's an action that I control. Right on. Well, the person that's accountable for sales or bringing on new clients, that individual would own that particular measurable. Well, sounds simple, but now you're saying, well, the buck starts with Sally. Sally's on sales, and so Sally's got to own that, and the buck stops there. That also helps the owner of a business start to delegate the things that was critical in the business and not feel like he or she has to do everything. Right. So as you start to add people into the organization, you give them the accountability on a measurable or a metric. And that one, it really helps that person feel, okay, I'm actually making a difference in this business, right? I own a part of this business that I got to move forward, but also gives that owner a chance to say, okay, let me put someone else on the hook for us. Yes, I own the business. I'm ultimately responsible for that. But if I can get that accountability throughout the organization, then I can really start to see how I can get others involved in helping me along the way. So it's not just all about me all the time, which I know a lot of entrepreneurs face that challenge.
Yeah. I hear a lot of people who are in business for themselves say, I feel like my business is running me.
Sure.
And so how do you kind of turn that around to being, the person that's not letting their business run them?
Yeah, I mean, very, very common, right? We how much time are you spending running your business versus it running you, right? We talk about that a bit, or spend time working on your business instead of in your business, and it really depends on the stage, right? And that's it's never not a one size fits all answer. But the first thing that we say to anyone that we're talking to that is even considering working with an operating system, obviously I talk about EOS. There are plenty of operating systems out there, right? So I think the first thing is find something that resonates with you, right? You've got to find something that makes sense. So, read some books, make sure that you're continuing to learn and say, okay, this makes sense. So for me, I've read a lot of different operating systems, different books about business. But when I read Traction, I was like, this is what makes sense for me. A lot of these things resonate. It's perfect for me. So the first thing I'd say to someone, if you want to get out of the business of working in your business, right, and get a chance where it's not running you, is to find an operating system that you believe in. You've got to have something that you can fall back on. And then each one of those is going to have a set of tools, some things for you to follow that are going to give you the chance to do what you need to do to move your business forward. One of the questions we ask every one of our business owners before we get started before anything happens, we say, what is it that you want to get from your business? What are you looking to get out of it? Right? Is this a lifelong passion and purpose? Is it I'm going to sell in 5 years? I want to double my revenue. I don't know what it is. Only you know what it is. So let's articulate that, understand what that is, and then let's start lining up all the work that we're doing, all the activities we're doing to achieve that. Right? But you've got to know where you're going. And we start there. And I know it sounds simple, but actually to have someone articulate that right from the beginning is actually a great way to start to figure out, okay, here are the steps we need to take to get you out of, being in your business all day long and get you spending some time working on it. And then as we go through the process, we start to introduce those things that are going to allow for that to happen with more frequency.
Yeah. I think about when I started my business, and it's like, if I knew then what I know now, I would have been a powerhouse. It's kind of like, I feel like it's kind of like a journey in a sense,
Absolutely.
Every year is different. Who would have thought we would have had a year like COVID, all these things. But one thing that happens a lot in businesses is that we have these like plateaus or ceilings.
We call them ceilings. Yep, absolutely.
Here's my question though, is like, how can a business break through those ceilings? What are some, tools or some things that if somebody's listening today and they feel like they're on a plateau, how do we break through those?
Are you sure you haven't read Traction yet, Lorraine? Because we actually answer this question right in there, and we talk about it in the very first time we meet with our clients. So it's well teed up, right? Because we call it hitting the ceiling, and it's so common, and it can happen in a couple different ways. If you've got a large enough organization, it can happen within a department. If you've got an organization that is, sort of medium sized, maybe it's happening to the whole company, and you fit that. Or if you're on your own, you could be personally hitting the ceiling, or your company's hit, right? You'll see these ceilings happen all the time in life and in business. And so we teach a couple of strategies to help people overcome those moments, what we call them periods of evolution, revolution, when you've hit a ceiling. It's like, what's going to go? Because when you hit that ceiling, where are you going to go? You're going to be able to break through it, or you're going to hit that ceiling flatline, or worst case scenario, is the business going to fall backwards when that happens, right? And these things are inevitable, and they're going to keep happening. And so we teach something called the 5 leadership abilities to help folks overcome hitting that ceiling. And I mentioned a couple of them, of the things that we do, but how do you create more simplification in your business is one. Another is, what aspects of the business can you help delegate, and what are the tools that you use to help delegate? So we teach some tools around that. We teach business owners how to predict better. So business is not happening to them, but they're actually saying, oh, this is what's about to happen. I know it's going to happen, whether my business is seasonal, or I haven't had the chance to put the dollars into marketing, or maybe I've invested a lot in marketing. So now I'm going to have a lot of more inbound traffic, and I've got to adjust to that. So the ability to predict a little bit in your business. Then we talk about systemizing the business. So what is the processes that you've got in place that are repeatable, that you can fall back on time again? So even in those times when you hit a ceiling, where is the process? Is there a process breakdown? Is there something that I can call back on? Or finally, what's the structure of your organization, right? Do you have all of the right people in the right place to help you break through that? So those 5 leadership abilities, simplify, delegate, predict, systemize, and structure, are things that we teach to help business owners break through those ceilings, which are going to happen. It's going to happen time and again. And then you call back on one of those things, say, okay, which one of this is not working? All right, let me spend the time there to break through this ceiling.
I love that. It's interesting. When I needed to hire, and when I went through the process, the guy who was helping me, I actually hired a company to do this for me, and they hired to my weaknesses. Wanted to strengthen me. And so I had to write down everything I did in a day.
Amazing.
And by the way,
that's amazing.
That creates a lot of awareness. It's like, I really do that? Well, I'm not going to give up my coffee break for sure, but
right.
It's very interesting. And that really kind of helped me on you talk about systems, and I feel like systems are very important. And I'm not a system girl. I'm kind of like, oh, squirrel, and so to have certain things in place really does make your business run well. And I noticed that right away when I could see what I didn't have to do anymore.
Yeah.
That I could delegate, and being able to see that whole. In fact, I'm about ready to do that again, because
Awesome.
You always have to. You always have to do it. I'd like to have another hire by the end of the year, but I'm trying to figure out if I can do that.
Yeah.
So, but it's very, I'm going to do the whole process over again. What am I doing? What are they doing? Do I need another person? All that kind of stuff. And it's actually kind of fun, once a year, maybe.
Well, it's a great check-in. So yeah, a couple of things that it sounds like you've already done. We just label them a little differently, but the first thing is you want to make sure that you know all the things that go on in the day so that you really know what you are good at and where you like to spend your time. And focusing on those. We call those the above the line activities, but we help with a little tool. Once again, another simple tool called Delegate and Elevate, but list all the stuff that has to get done, figure out what you're really good at, what you like to do, and then get rid of the rest of it.
Yeah.
Right? That's going to allow that business to go forward. That Delegate and Elevate it's a great way to look at it. And when you go through it, it's a little scary. Like, well, I just spent 20% of my day on stuff that I don't like doing. Right. And even if you're good at it, if you don't like doing it, get rid of it. Someone else really likes to do it and they're good at it too. Right. And so everyone has that a unique ability. I heard on one of your episodes recently, talking to a gentleman, he was talking about the same thing, right? Everyone's got a unique ability. Someone's bringing something to the table that as you're saying, should be complementary to what you're doing. So let them take it. They're going to, the things that may be below the line for you that you don't like doing are going to be above the line for somebody else. So find those people. Right. That's that complementary piece. It's, really, really valuable. Yeah.
You mentioned something interesting, unique ability. How does a business owner find, or a business, realize and find their unique ability? How, what is one of the processes that you can go through to figure out?
Yeah. I mean, it certainly happens over the course of time. You may think, your unique ability, then you start to dig into it a little bit more and realize, oh, that's not really it yet. It's absolutely evolves, and like anything, it is a journey. You mentioned it yourself, right? And I've also had that same feeling. If I knew then what I know now, man, it would have been a lot better. But that's part of it, right? Yeah, that's the journey that you're on, and that learning that comes along the way. Well, you just add that and make yourself more effective going forward. So that tool that I mentioned, that Delegate and Elevate tool, is a really eye-opening tool for many business owners that we work with, where they start to get in and say, you know what, this is actually what I want to spend my time doing. I'm forced to do that other stuff. And when you're forced to do something, well, it will just suck your energy, right? It's just not rewarding at all. It's not why you opened the business in the first place, or, tried to make a go of this idea that you had. And so really understanding that. So that's one of the tools that we utilize. The other thing that we utilize is when you are building out an organization, whether you're starting with 3 or 5 people and you want it to be 20 people, understanding what each one of the functions in the organization is accountable for. So we build out accountability charts, not org charts, right? So accountability charts speak to, you're sitting in the sales function. These are the things that you're responsible for. Is that something that you want to do? Right. And so you end up attracting people into these functions where that is their unique ability, because they're saying, okay, yeah, I know exactly what it is you want me to do, and I really want to do that. Right. It's a great way to make sure that folks are in a seat in your accountability chart, which reflects the things that they're really good at and they want to spend their time on. Right. Yeah. I'm never sitting in the finance seat. Ever in my life will I ever sit in the finance seat. So that is one of the first things that I push away, because that's never going to sit well with me. I know who I am. Just to tell you a quick funny story about that. I'm going through some things in my parents' home, going through their estate, and my father, for some reason, had kept all of my grade checks from when I was in high school. And it was funny to go back and hit like teachers' comments. I mean, I was like, how did you have this? But he did. And I'm flipping through it and said, Scott does this, that, and the other thing, but Scott could spend a little more time on the detail. I'm like, oh, that still holds true. That was true at 14. Guess what? It's still true at 53, right? I mean, I can do it. I don't like it. And I'd rather have someone else there. So the first thing that's got to go is, for me, finance. I got to have someone else on those details. I'm happy to collect the information, but I need someone else to work through it. I know where my strength is. That is not it. So things like that, we help to help folks identify, and that's throughout the organization. So yes, it's for the business owner, but it should be for everyone else that you hire, right? You wouldn't want to have someone that's really good at detail sitting there in a planning session. They're going to lose their mind, right? So you've got to make sure that folks are spending time in the place where they really, really can thrive. Yeah,
it's funny. I think about that a lot. When somebody starts going into the details and start planning everything out, I actually I can't take it.
Yeah.
You know, me leading a lot of groups in all various kind of settings and stuff, there's always that one person. It's like, oh my God, here we are. We're going to be here another half an hour now,
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I once read this book. It was called The Zone of Genius. And, it's a really good book. But what really made me realize is that, I'm very competent at a lot of stuff. I can do a lot of stuff. And then I pat myself on the back and I'm like, I'm just really amazing. But the thing is should I really, just because I'm competent at something, should I really be doing that? So I think it's important though, as a business owner, that because it's your business, that you should know how to do everything, because you never know, like, if an important part, they decide to get another job, or, the worst case scenario, they're called away or whatever. So you always have to be able to do it. But the bottom line is you have to realize that at some point you have to give up some of that stuff that you're competent at.
Yeah, if you want to grow. And that's why we ask, going back to where we started a little bit, it's like, what do you want to get out of this business? If like, look, I'm just happy doing this for me, and I'll have one other person, and this is the size of my business, I'm happy and content with that. Well, then that's perfect. Just roll with that. But if you do say, well, I want to get to X level within business, well, you're going to have to start to give away some stuff. There's actually a really good book that I just read that not necessarily part of the EOS library of books, but it is really complimentary, and it's called 10X is Easier Than 2X. And it's written by Dan Sullivan and Dr. Ben Hardy. They've written several books, and Who Not How is another great one, since we're talking about delegating, right? It's not about how the work gets done, but who's doing it, right? Because just because you know how to do something, perhaps someone else knows how to do it a little better, right? So who is better than how, right? So who, not how, but also 10X is easier than 2X, and just talks about making those big steps as opposed to incremental ones is really how you move a business forward, and sort of thinking a little bigger. And I don't want to steal anything from that. I've only read through it once, so by no means an expert, but it is really a great read if you are out there thinking about, how do I really get this business to take off? Thinking about that in that manner, not incrementally, but what are the big leaps? And one of the informative things within that book is just look back in your life. Where have been the biggest jumps in your life? And they've typically been from big decisions. I'm going to move. I'm going to change jobs. I'm going to open this company. I'm going to do, like, those big 10X type of thoughts and moves are the things where you've had the most jumps in your life. Go back to those and say, okay, what's the thing in your business that would be the 10X thing?
Yeah, I'm going to actually switch gears a little bit.
Yeah.
It's part of the show where we get real a little bit.
Okay. Yep.
And so tell me why you love being an entrepreneur, why you like being in business for yourself.
Yeah, it's a good question and I think about it all the time, because I did have a pretty long career working for others. They were entrepreneurial companies, but they weren't mine. I was working for this, and I kind of thought that was the way, right? I just like, I'll follow that career. But as I got into those and realized, boy, there's something more. And I think for me, there's a certain pride out there in making a go of it on your own. So the small business that my wife and I own, for example, is a haircut shop. I know we're audio only. I'm a bald guy, but I do own a haircut shop. So right there, that's an interesting decision. But just I'll never forget once we took a shell, right? It was a concrete shell, and started to take shape as to what it would ultimately be, with the look and feel inside that. And when I walked in, like, okay, like, yeah, this is a little scary, and I've taken up this loan to do it, but that sense of pride and doing it, that to me, huge, right? So that's one thing, and it definitely spoke to that. And you can get some of that from working for others, but there's nothing like doing it on your own, right? To really have that, but to put the ego aside, and I won't get too philosophical, but there's more to it than just going to work every day. There's more to this thing that we're doing day in, day out that makes up our short time here on this earth. And there's more to it than going in there and say, okay, I'm going to go in, this paycheck is going to come every 2 weeks. There's more to things outside of work. There's just more to things that you can give back during your time at work. And so when my last corporate role ended, I was looking for something that had a little bit greater, for me, purpose. And I've always had this coaching gene within me from things that I've done, and then to really be able to follow that purpose day in, day out is, that's been really sort of that intrinsic value that just could not have gotten elsewhere. And that was probably the real thing for me that pushed me into this latest entrepreneurial venture, which is my coaching practice.
Yeah. And so we all struggle, all businesses struggle. What would you say is something that you struggle with as a business owner?
Yeah, it's the thing for me, and just getting things going. So let me talk about two things. I'll talk about within just our haircut shop was just getting it out there and saying, okay, doors are open. Why isn't anybody showing up? Right. And that's a bit of a passive marketing, and and figuring that out a little bit, and just living with the realization that this is going to take a couple of years to get going. Although it was a franchise, it was an unknown franchise here in Arizona. And so it was a concept that was created in Portland, Oregon, that where they were trying to push out, right? It was the beginning of their franchising efforts to go national. And so that was just a realization, okay, now that's going to take a different set of expertise and a different set of learning to make that happen. So, that's at the very substance of it, marketing, right? What you do and what you spend your time on, but no surprise, right? Any new business there. Similarly here for this is just a little bit different. The world of coaching is very personal. We do get pretty open and honest with our clients and ask our clients of the same, and just being able to really gain their trust that, hey, we're going to go on this journey together. You can trust me. I have your best interests at heart. I'm going to push you where you need to get pushed. And I'll pull back when I think it's there. But the quicker that our clients say, they're willing to get honest, to get real, the better off they're going to be. But that can be a hard hurdle to break when you're just starting someone. And you mentioned you had a coach as well, I think, earlier on, or maybe before we started talking, but that it takes a minute to really establish that and build that level of trust where you can share the things that are going on in your head, the things you don't want anyone else to know, but you got to tell your coach that. And, we need to play that role there. And that's just a little bit different for me. And that's probably the area that I spend the most time thinking about and trying to read about and learn about and building that trust and credibility with my clients or potential clients.
Yeah. What is one piece of advice that's kind of universal that would be helpful to somebody who's starting out, somebody who's seasoned, somebody who's thinking of starting a business? What would that one piece of advice be?
So I'm going to use a favorite quote of mine, and I've come back to this quote time and again. And as long as it's okay to have that advice be in the form of a quote, but it's a person's true character is revealed when no one else is watching. And nothing can be truer that when you're out there on your own, doing business on your own, and what are the things that you're going to do? What are you going to hold yourself accountable to? How are you going to approach your business? How are you going to approach your potential clients? Like, what are you going to represent within yourself to your clients and holding up to that? And, that every time I think about how I want to be perceived or how I want to represent myself, I go back to that particular quote, and it always resonates and say, okay, this is what you're about. And if folks want to work with you and someone who's like that, then great. And if they don't, that's great too, but that's who I'm about.
That's absolutely beautiful. And it's so true. It's like, I just recently saw that quote. It always keeps on coming, and always comes up when it's time for me to actually hear it again.
I know I use it a lot and say it a lot because I had a team along the way that bought that for me, and I had it in my office when I was in that world of working in the corporate world. So it obviously was resonating with them. So now I've taken it to my home office and have it here. So I look at it all day, right? It sits right there. It sits there and resonates with me time and time again.
I love that. Well, I mean, if somebody resonated with you today and they need to know how to get in touch with you, how would they do that?
Sure. You can find me on LinkedIn. Easy to find out there. It's Scott Goodrich. I'm out in Gilbert, Arizona. But I do work with folks across the US. So we're not limited by geography. So you can find me on LinkedIn. I have a podcast as well. So you're going to check that out. It's called Grow Your Damn Business. And we try to talk to entrepreneurs and have, let them share their funny stories about the things that have gone up and down, and try to, let others know that you're not in it alone. And so the Grow Your Damn Business podcast is just a way for entrepreneurs to have a little platform to talk about that. And last but not least, you can reach out to me on email, which is scott.goodrich@EOS Worldwide. And if you want to drop that in there, we can do that. And for anyone that is listening, that has any interest and was looking for a copy of the book Traction, I've got a free copy of Gino's book Traction, which is what EOS is based on. And even if you never worked with a coach and never want to talk to anyone about implementing EOS, read the book. It is worth the time to read the book. You're guaranteed to pull something out of it you can put into practice in your business ASAP. So just reach out to me and I'll get you a free copy of the book Traction.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being such a great guest. And to everyone out there, till next week, I will see you soon. Goodbye.
Thanks for listening to the Biz Gone Social podcast. Find us on Instagram at BizGoneSocial for extra tips. Check back weekly for new episodes. Until next time, stay social.